to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Today is Monday. It is the day after an insane weekend of both college and pro football, and certainly great coverage here on SportsGrid throughout the weekend as well. Thanks for being part of our show here today. Of course, we'll recap everything that happened in the National Football League. We got one more game to go tonight between the Rams and the Vikings. We'll have a preview of that as well. Also, Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid insider, will tell us what the latest is in the NFL and the coaching searches that are going on right now. Pat Evans also joins us from Legal Sports Report, latest in the NBA, college basketball, and any updates in the Major League Baseball hot stove. We give them to you as well. So with this very busy day to start, we know where to begin, and we'll sort of work backwards from where things ended to where they started, because we got a college football national championship to mix in here 1 week from tonight. So let's get started with the biggest upset of the weekend in the National Football League's wild card round. Although most would consider this not to be an upset, the Washington Commanders were a fantastic team during the regular season. They go into Tampa Bay and they win the game 23-20 on a last-second field goal by Zane Gonzalez that hit the upright and went in. 2 quarterbacks have engineered an offense on the road in the playoffs with 0 punts and 0 turnovers. Those are quarterback Jaden Daniels, the rookie, gets a win and is moving on to the next round in Detroit. And, of course, Peyton Manning did it way back in 2003. So the question does become, how legit is Washington at this point? Can they make a deeper run into the playoffs? Dan Quinn remembers the first time that Tampa Bay took care of business against Washington and said getting even in this one was a must.
Just finishing up with the guys and heading into this week, this was 100% the battle we expected. Coming back here 18 weeks ago, they beat us, man, and it wasn't even as close as the score indicated. And so for us to show the improvement that we've made in that time was significant for us. This is a really good team in Tampa, and we knew it would go down all the way to the wire. We had talked about overtime. We had talked about all the winning time moments all week. At the end, like for us to be in the turnover margin, the plus, that's big for us. When we can get that thing into that space, we're good. I was certainly pleased defensively, much improved in the first half. This is a good running team, good screen game. And I thought early in the week, you may have heard me say complementary football is what we would need here. I thought the best indicator of that was the long drive in the second quarter. It might have been 16 or 17 plays going back, getting a punt, and then the 4-minute at the end to get a stop and then have a chance to, with 4.5 minutes or so to go. But yeah, we really expected a tough fight tonight, and it's exactly what we did. We really expected it to go down all the way to the end, and it did.
And Washington will now take on Detroit on a Saturday night. Meanwhile, the Packers-Eagles game was one of the duds of the weekend, unfortunately. 22-10, the final score, as the Eagles take care of business, and they did cover the 4 or 5 or 5.5, whatever the spread was, they ended up covering. Not the best game for the Packers offense. Jordan Love picked off a few times. Josh Jacobs had a nice game on the ground, but they really couldn't do much else. And as far as Jalen Hurts and the offense is concerned for the Eagles, they kind of also left a little bit to be desired. Not really much happening for them on offense, although they were able to consistently stop the Packers offense. So defense showed up, and Nick Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, said still more work to be done to work out some kinks before next week.
Again, do we want plays back that happened today? Yeah. But one thing I loved about what happened on the offense is that it wasn't going great. And this was the case for our entire team. Like, Q gives up a PI on third down, and then Q comes back and has a big third down stop on a 4-point play on 3rd and 9 from the 9. That's dog mentality. Jake misses an extra point, and then Jake puts the game away with 2 huge field goals after that. That's dog mentality. The offense isn't going the way we want it to go, but somehow, some way, when they cut the lead to 6, we find a way to put it back to 2 scores. And then I think it came back to another possession again, and we found a way to put it up. Actually, they're up 9, whatever it was, but we found a way to score again. That's just the ebbs and flows of a game. We're going to go back to work tomorrow, and no victory Monday for us. We could play Saturday too. We don't know, but no victory Monday for us. We're going to go back to work because we do have a lot of things to clean up.
And the Eagles will await the winner of tonight's game between Minnesota and the Los Angeles Rams. Meanwhile, the Denver Broncos traveled to Buffalo and took an early 7-0 lead. That did not last long. The Bills scored 31 points unanswered, and they end up taking the victory. Not much more to say. Just dominant on the ground. James Cook, Josh Allen. Denver had a nice season, a very surprising season, but they ran into a buzzsaw in Buffalo and Josh Allen, who hit Ty Johnson on a 4th down and 1 in the back of the end zone, which really put this game away. Allen said it wasn't really one thing in particular for the Bills, just a team effort that got the win.
Well, I don't think there was one certain thing over another. We just wanted to come out and execute well. We ran the ball well. Our offensive line did a heck of a job all day. Jimbo ran the ball hard. Ty and Ray, I hate what happened to Ray. I feel like that doesn't happen too often in this offense, and hate that feeling that I have for him right now. But got to see him; he's doing okay. But at the end of the day, we just wanted to come out and play our best football, and I feel like we did that today. Obviously, everything gets heightened, and maybe you watch another couple games of what the defense is doing. But we're not trying to do anything drastically different. We're just trying to go out there and play our best football. We had a really good week of practice. We had a great week of game planning. I thought our offensive staff, again, put in some great plays as you saw today. But ultimately, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and Joes, and guys are ready to go. We got our rest, getting able to kind of not play everybody that last game. Guys were refreshed, and again, we're going to need to get our rest this week. And we got a really, really good Baltimore Ravens team coming here. They put the thumping on us earlier in the year, and we know that. We understand that. So, again, it's the most important game because it's the next one.
Expectation is that Sunday night football game between Baltimore and Buffalo could be the highest rated game of the season because the Ravens very easily took care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Saturday. 28-14, Derrick Henry rushed for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Steelers lost 5 games in a row to end the season. Also, another upset on Saturday, the Houston Texans took care of the Los Angeles Chargers fairly easily. Final score 32-12. Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions. The Texans took care of advantage of those mistakes and did the rest. The Texans are moving on to play Kansas City on Saturday. The New England Patriots are naming a new head coach in about 15 minutes from now. Mike Vrabel will be named as the next Patriots head coach. He'll replace Gerard Mayo. Khalil Mack says he's unsure of his football future. He'll be a free agent. He said that post-game. He's on the Chargers, by the way. The Vikings also, as we mentioned, 2.5-point favorites tonight. The game is in Glendale, Arizona. They moved it because of the fires in Southern California. Ohio State took care of Texas 28-14 in the Cotton Bowl. In case you missed that one over the weekend, they'll take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on Monday night. They are 8.5-point favorites. That's the current line over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Also, Anthony Knapp, Notre Dame's left tackle, was injured in the Capital One Orange Bowl, and he will not play in the national championship. And former Michigan quarterback Alex Orji announced that he is in the transfer portal no longer. He is transferring to UNLV, so he'll become a running Rebel. Naturally, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Southern California with all these fires going on, and certainly it has affected the sports world as well. The Los Angeles Lakers and Los Angeles Clippers are expected to resume their home games tonight. The Clippers, 6-point favorites tonight against the Heat. Lakers, 3-point favorites against Wemby and the San Antonio Spurs. Also, Philadelphia 76ers were talking about building a new arena in South Philly. They're not going to build this new arena, and that comes after basically they got approval to build this controversial new project from the city council. Also, in the NBA last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers, hottest team in the league after winning 12 games in a row. That now comes to an end as the Indiana Pacers won this one by a final of 108-93. All right, we got it all in. Coming up next, Vinnie Iyer will join us from Sporting News. We'll talk about some of the things we saw over the weekend and give you the latest odds over on FanDuel to win the championship games and win it all. You're watching NewsWire on SportsGrid, and we'll be back after these quick messages. Don't go away.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Good morning. Thanks for waking up with us here on NewsWire. Vinnie Iyer is up and ready to recap everything that happened in the NFL, and we'll look ahead to the next round. It seems like Vinny and I have shared and probably sharing the same opinion moving forward as we'll begin with Sunday Night Football. And anybody who has watched SportsGrid all season long knew that I picked Washington to go to the Super Bowl, and I was laughed at all season long. No one, Vinny, is laughing right now. 23-20, they beat the Buccaneers. a game where they made more mistakes, honestly, than Tampa. Now, Tampa Bay made one really critical one. I know the fumble really cost them, but no one is talking about the fact that they could not convert a fourth down near the goal line a couple of different times. And Vinny, this is no surprise. Washington struggles in the red zone like nobody's business. I can't figure out why. And if they could get that sorted out, maybe next year, adding a player or two or something like that. I mean, they already won 12 games during the regular season. I got a feeling about this team, man. I think they got a shot to beat Detroit, and that line has crashed from 10.5 down to 8.5.
Yeah, you look at the Commanders. I mean, I think they tried too hard to run the ball, maybe in the red zone. Those plays were not the best, and I don't know why they don't use more of that zone read that we see from the Ravens when it's in scoring position, and just give Jane Daniels the ball and a chance to take off. They're always looking for that, maybe that precise pass in the middle of the field somewhere, and then Jane Daniels was a little late on one delivery where they could have scored as well. So maybe there's some nerves there. I mean, the guy doesn't seem like he has nerves the way he played in his first playoff game as a rookie on the road. Arguably the best rookie road performance we've ever seen in the playoffs. So when you look at that, I don't think he's going to be fazed by the Lions. They have a lot of defensive issues. There's guys in and out coming. And the Lions are a tough team to run on. So I think what I would do if I'm the Commanders, be aggressive. You've got the passing game working. It's not just Terry McLaurin now. You got Olamide Zaccheaus, you got Zach Ertz, and Diami Brown has come on. So all of a sudden they have a lot of extra weapons. Just be aggressive, attack the Lions downfield, and they have a shot because, again, you look at this Lions team, who are their two worst losses against the last 2 years? Lamar Jackson's Ravens and Josh Allen's Bills. Running quarterbacks can probably give the Lions a little bit more trouble than we expect, and especially when their defense is this banged up.
Yeah, I mean, there are 4 games coming this weekend, folks. If you don't think that one team is going to upset another, then you haven't watched football in the last 50 years. I mean, we don't know where it's going to come, but it's going to come. Maybe it comes with the winner tonight going to Philadelphia and winning. I don't know, Vinny. Philly's kind of a hard team to read here a little bit. I know that their offense was in neutral for most of the day, but this has been their story, I think, for a lot of the season. A slow starting team. Green Bay started slow again. This one went way under the total, 22-10. Vic Fangio has that Philly defense playing fantastic. Saquon Barkley had a nice game as well. And most feel it was just the Eagles shaking off the rust, and they'll have a better performance against whoever they play next week. I don't know if you feel that way, but certainly they're going to be, I would guess, a favorite, whether it's Minnesota or the Rams going into the Link next week.
Yeah, they'll definitely be a nice favorite there. They crushed the Rams in the first meeting with Saquon Barkley pushing past 260 rushing yards. That was in Los Angeles. So I think they'd probably prefer to get that matchup again where they know Barkley's had success. The Vikings is a little trickier because they're going to have to outscore the Vikings, and they're not going to get away with winning a game with 4 takeaways. I don't think the Vikings are going to give them that. And you see the red zone work by the Eagles wasn't very good. They were 1 of 4 there. It was terrible team, by the way, on third down. They were 3 of 11 in that game against the Packers. So they got to get these things fixed. When you're a top rushing team and you're facing some good third downs here, like you can't get 3rd and 10 and beyond when you're the Eagles and you can run the ball that well. They got to get going. And then A.J. Brown, like you can't have him reading a book on the sidelines. He has to be actually making catches on the field. And I don't care if he's double teamed, give him a shot to make some plays downfield. He's that strong. He's that important to this downfield passing offense. They're just not going to get away with this type of limited passing, whether they're facing the Vikings or the Rams in the next round.
Yeah, I agree. Somehow they got to get that figured out. It's kind of been a theme for A.J. Brown for most of the season, honestly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like the AFC is the juggernaut here. Like, I kind of lean to it. Unless I see something really good from Detroit the next couple of weeks, it's going to be hard for me to pick the NFC in the Super Bowl because I do feel that's where the power is over in the AFC. And that's why when we look at this line here, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think the Rams are going to win the conference. I don't think so. I'm not big on the Rams. They could win tonight for sure, but I don't see them consistently enough winning 3 games to get there. One of the games they'll have a blip. Honestly, Vinny, I could see any of these other teams winning the NFC.
Yeah, they have loaded offenses. I mean, that's where the Rams don't come into play. I mean, you'd think on paper, looking at some of their offensive pieces, that they would be right up there with those offenses, but they aren't. I mean, these are better offenses that can score, a little bit more explosive. And look, any of these teams can outscore each other. if it comes into a high-scoring game. And that's why, again, the Eagles have to ramp it up here and try to put up some points. And, again, the Commanders should be aggressive because they know the Lions are going to score plenty on their defense.
All right, so the Bills take care of business against the Broncos. They're going to have this epic Sunday night matchup against the Ravens. The line came out last night. It's pretty much where it's been. Buffalo -1.5, Sunday Night Football, total 51.5. The NFL is speculating this will be the highest rated television game ever for a playoff non-Super Bowl game. Vinny, I would agree. I think this is, on paper, the best matchup we've seen in years.
Yeah, 2 MVP caliber quarterbacks, the 2 finalists probably here when we get down to it, the 2 guys who got the most votes probably. So when you look at it, 2 quarterbacks that also need to get past Patrick Mahomes, get to a Super Bowl, win one to really kind of stamp their careers. Even Lamar having 2 MVPs, I still think he needs this and to break through. And he did control the action versus Josh Allen the first meeting, regular season. A lot of things have changed, but it was 35-10. That game was in Baltimore. So this is a very important game for both quarterbacks, both teams, the coaches, everyone involved here. And it should be spectacular. I mean, the way these guys have played all season, it should be a lot of fun. So, again, the Bills are a lot healthier from the first meeting. Let's see if that makes a difference the second time around.
All right, finally, who did you pick tonight with the Vikings and Rams? I mean, I know which Vikings team's going to show up. I have no idea which Rams team. Rams are going to win 31-7 or lose 23-6 or something like that. I have no idea.
I think the Vikings are going to learn some of their lessons from the previous game. Don't blitz too much and run the ball a little bit earlier, and then you'll beat the Rams in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I got Minnesota tonight. All right, Vinny, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News. Coming up, our SportsGrid insider Adam Kaplan joins us. How did the Patriots land on Mike Vrabel? We'll tell you next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Our SportsGrid insider, Adam Kaplan, is kind enough to spend 2 different segments with us here. So he'll be with us now and then also be with us in about 15 minutes from now. And I know he has a very busy day ahead. We got this Mike Vrabel press conference that's about to go down here, so he's got to tap in on that. And then naturally all the coaches eliminated, like Tomlin and all those others, are doing their pressers today. We'll learn a lot more. So Adam, once again, thanks for spending a lot of time with us here on the show today. And so we won't kibitz. We'll get right into it here so we can get everything in. Let's start off with Mike Vrabel. We learned Sunday morning. I didn't know that you could actually have this leaked on a day where there's playoffs. Usually you don't leak that kind of stuff and you wait till today, but it came out yesterday. Vrabel is back with the New England Patriots. And look, who's going to argue with this? Vrabel was a good coach at Tennessee. He took a year off, kind of, sorted things out. Do you feel that this is the kind of move that will get New England close to back to where they used to be? I mean, people say that they're going to restore the greatness. I'm like, they don't have Tom Brady here, okay? So let's chill. But can they get better under Vrabel?
All right, so Craig, here's the story with the situation, the football team as we go forward here. So they know, it's not a secret, they need to rebuild the roster. They've got Drake May. I know they're happy with them. You have to understand, rookie quarterbacks are generally inconsistent. He was, but he showed a lot of upside. What they're going to do is they're going to address the receiver position this offseason. They tried to make the trade for Brandon Ayuk. They couldn't get him. They tried to sign Calvin Ridley. They didn't get him. He went to Tennessee. So this is not a secret to them. They're going to address the receiver position. They're going to address the roster. The offensive line's not very good. Pass rush is bad, but they have a quarterback. Now, why did it come out? Why did they make this announcement on Sunday that he's their new head coach? Well, first of all, they wanted to get this deal done because they knew there were other teams involved hovering over the situation. But the Patriots made it very clear to him immediately, like really within 48 hours after Gerard Mayo was fired, this was going to get done. And they went out and got it done because the Bears were interested and other teams were interested. So they got this deal done early. Because look, remember, Craig, in this business, I don't know how it's for you in MLB as you cover that sport very well. But if it's a guy who's on the street, not coaching, you could hire him right now. You don't have to wait. I know that's the other thing. That's the other part of your question. You do not have to wait as long as the guy is not working right now.
Okay, so there you go. It sums it up. Under Gerard Mayo, certainly they struggled a lot on offense and points and offense. And I think the deal is with the Patriots, Mayo was known as a defensive guy, and their defense wasn't good either. Yeah. All right, so let's move on. Yeah, let's move on here. Let's move to the games. I think most people want to talk about games. All right, so Steelers-Ravens here, two sides of the coin. Lamar probably needs one more game for everybody to put these demons behind him, which is really unfortunate because he's so good, and now he's up against Buffalo this week. But, that line, when it was out at 10, as we talked about last week, it seemed fishy to me just because – the Steelers, as I said last week on the show, and it turned out to be true, but that was a guess, that they reminded me a lot of Philly last year. And boy, did that turn out to be the case. My gosh, they fell apart. But first, Lamar Jackson, let's hit on him and just simply put how much improved he looks in the playoffs. Said he was nervous, but still got through it. And then let's get to what Pittsburgh does here, because this is a tough one for me, Adam. I don't really want to be in that position where the Rooneys are right now.
First of all, let's take the latter first. It's highly unlikely they're going to make a move on Mike Tomlin. Just signed a contract extension early last year. But Mike is going to have to realize that this is on him. He actually owned it after the game, but there could be some coaching staff changes. The offense is just brutal. But getting back to Lamar Jackson, and I've turned my card in for Pro Football Writers Association on Wednesday night. It's a regular season award as the AP also votes, for MVP and so forth. But this is what someone with the Ravens told me when I was at training camp, and I've kept in touch with this guy throughout the season. At some point, it didn't start off great between him and Henry. At some point, it's going to hit, and when it hits, it's going to be beautiful. The match between Jackson and Henry, Craig, is incredible. You've seen it now for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and Henry obviously had a great season. Teams simply don't know what to do. In fact, if you look at Pittsburgh's run defense, which was one of the best in the regular season, they couldn't do anything against that run game. And it's good to see Lamar finally get a huge playoff win in a dominant fashion. We know how he struggled in the playoffs. This is a phenomenal game. And by the way, coaches always tell me you want to play your best ball in December and January, and they sure are after struggling midseason.
Yeah, it's going to be an epic game, which we'll get into. And Adam, the one thing I want to get to here, it's, the one thing I find funny is that everybody wants Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Oh, they're all upset. And, the Dolphins are an iconic franchise too, Adam. They haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. They would take Tomlin's record in the regular season any day of the week.
Yeah, and Tomlin, though, has not won a playoff game since 2017. But this is a collapse. So, Phillies and the Jaguars last season also who collapsed down the stretch and should have won that division.
Yes. Yeah, good point. All right, we'll be back with Adam in just a minute, but up next, Pat Evans joins us.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Pat Evans is with us from LegalSportsReport.com. You can catch him, of course, on social media on X and over at the website as well. Pat, great to have you back here on this Monday on NewsWire. And let's get started. We, certainly always are paying attention to rules and legalese in these different states. And, it's really the wild, wild west when you think about sports betting. Every state has their own restrictions and laws. It's not, it's oversought by the government, but, state by state, they make their own decisions. So we're going to start today with Nebraska, which, like other states in the United States, don't have college sports betting on their own team, such as Cornhuskers. But wait, there seems to be a possibility that we could see a change there, as I read on Legal Sports Report.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, every state is different, and each state has their own little nooks and crannies of crazy regulations. Nebraska is certainly no different. It's a state we don't talk about a lot, Craig. I don't even know if we have since I've been coming on this show in the last 3 years. Nebraska legalized sports betting at the ballot in 2020. The legislator put it through in 2021, making, their regulations. And one of the stipulations to ensure it had enough votes to pass the legislator was to ban in-state college betting. And I think that's a huge aspect in Nebraska because they don't have any professional sports teams. And Nebraska football and Nebraska basketball now and volleyball, I mean, it's huge. There's estimates that, banning in-state college football might make the handle drop. I think it was like 15% or something like that. But one could imagine in Nebraska that could be pretty significant increase because of how, the sports ecosystem is there. And so this year, another note was when they legalized sports betting, it was part of a bigger casino referendum, which would legalize casino betting. And there was no sports betting allowed until I think it was 2023 when the first casino started opening up. So, and it's only in person. So it's pretty interesting landscape there. But now we have a bill to kind of lift that ban on in-state college betting. So Nebraskans might be able to bet on Cornhusker football soon. Again, that's only in person. Last year, there was a late bill in a special session to help reduce property taxes. I think that's probably the last time we talked about Nebraska here. And they included online sports betting expansion. It didn't make any moves really during the special session, but Governor Jim Pillen came out and said he wants a priority bill filed this month, or back then he said in January, for the session. A priority bill kind of gets action no matter what. And that hasn't been filed yet, but I think that we will see a bill soon with priority kind of designation to expand into online sports betting in Nebraska. So Nebraska might be a kind of a fun state to watch this session that maybe a lot of people weren't paying attention to, but certainly some rules that are potentially going to change, and then potentially a fairly significant expansion there to go online from their 4 in-person casinos.
Yeah, definitely a state to watch. You're right. We haven't really talked Nebraska much. All right. So since sports betting was legalized, we have talked about this state quite a bit because they were really one of the first ones to get sports betting going back in 2018. That, of course, is Mississippi. But something, as I want to say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, must be in the water there, because how they can get in-person betting and 6 years later still not have online sports betting tells me there's something going on in a back room somewhere, Pat, with these casinos. The Beau Rivage. I mean, no offense, Beau Rivage. I know you guys have a sports bet. I mean, are they blocking this? Like, what exactly is going on here? Are they afraid that they're going to lose money here? Now, and I understand that notion, but I mean, this has gone on way too long, Pat, without an explanation.
I know it is kind of crazy to think about, because when we look at the landscape and so much of what we're talking about now is other states in the Southeast expanding. I mean, Alabama doesn't even have a lottery. They're talking about building a lottery or passing a lottery this year, potentially with sports betting. But again, I think we've talked about in the past that Alabama's going to maybe skirt that for a little bit and just get lottery done. Georgia, again, South Carolina, all these states have this little fundamentalist side of them that is pushing back on gambling and sports betting. Right. And I don't think that's any different in Mississippi. Mississippi, of course, does have that just vibrant casino culture, which I think helped that 2018 passage of in-person sports betting. And since then, they've tried a lot to get mobile sports betting passed, and it just hasn't moved. And I think, to your point, it is a lot of cannibalization concerns by a lot of the locally owned operators. Of course, they've got big casino companies, national and regional casino companies that are for expansion online. But I don't think you can discount the effect that local ownership has politically at state level governments. And I think that's kind of what's been holding it back, is those cannibalization concerns from the local casinos that don't have the weight of these giant casino conglomerates behind them. And then we get to this year, and I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit over the last couple of weeks as we head into this new legislative session. The sales of sports betting and even online gambling as a whole kind of momentum is the sales are kind of getting slack. There's not a lot of, the headwinds are growing, as we've talked about, the U.S. congressional hearings, the big media articles talking about problem gambling, just kind of the backlash of all the ads and frequent stuff. I was just reading an article about how the DraftKings partnership with Delta Airlines is just another kind of step of how annoyingly prevalent sports betting now is to people who don't sports bet. And that's where this kind of backlash is coming from. And I think that might be why we might not see a bill. The senator who leads the gambling committee in Mississippi said he doesn't plan to file a bill unless the gambling commission tells him to. And the gambling commission has come out and said, you know what, we don't, weigh in on any bills or laws. That's to them. We'll just regulate it. So he's not going to file it. He said, there's certainly other people who could file it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bill in Mississippi, but it doesn't seem like it's going to have a ton of momentum. But again, anything can happen in the political world and in these legislative sessions. So something could move. But again, we're not seeing anything right now in Mississippi.
All right. Well, we'll get an update, of course, as we go throughout the year. 2024 marked the year ESPN Bet took over their own sports betting entity and looking to make a big impact, I know, in 2025. And so therefore, part of their process, Pat, has been opening up a lot of these in-person sports books, and we just got word that several will be opening up across the country. What do you make of this news?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, over on the LSR podcast that we do every week, we talk a lot about kind of the race for third, and ESPN is a pretty distant second tier operator, and so they definitely have a lot of room to make up and gain ground, and they certainly need to. I think a lot of what they've talked about in the last couple of earnings reports of fully syncing with the ESPN app and the retention they have with customers they get from ESPN is actually pretty promising in the long run. Last week they announced they're opening 10 new ESPN branded sports books at casinos across the country. That's Penn Entertainment. That brings their total up to 19. They're also in 19 states mobily. And I don't think that's it is a brand. It's fun to go to an in-person sports book if you're a fan of a brand. But I don't know that will move a needle much in terms of market share because, I think as we've seen looking over stats and everything, it's about 95% generally of wagers are made online. So it's not going to move the needle a huge amount, but it is fun to see branding up and customers going into a casino and saying, hey, maybe I should bet at ESPN Bet versus, DraftKings if they're at, whatever casino they're at. So, it is a move. Does it move the needle much? We'll see. But ESPN Bet certainly trying to make some ground up on a couple of the leaders in that second tier, maybe Fanatics, BetMGM, Caesars, the likes.
Yeah, definitely want to see more from ESPN Bet this year to see if they can jump into fourth, third place. We know first and second owned by FanDuel and DraftKings as they have been for 6 years, without a doubt. All right, Pat, we'll catch up with you later in the week. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Thanks as always, Craig.
All right. Unfortunately, some bad news for the Philadelphia Eagles as defensive standout Nakobe Dean going to miss the remainder of the postseason. So the Eagles await the winner of tonight's game between Minnesota and Los Angeles, but they won't have one of their better players on defense for the remainder of the playoffs. We'll talk about how that could potentially impact the Eagles in the future. Adam Kaplan rejoins us to recap their game against the Packers next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, let's bring in Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid insider, and we'll jump right into that Eagles-Packers game. As I mentioned, Nakobe Dean going to be out for the season, it's being reported here. So, Adam, certainly that's a big loss for them, although their defense has been fantastic the entire season. I would think they can withstand one player's injury, but it was really Vic Fangio's scheming, and honestly, he's done a great job with Philadelphia this season. I don't know why Miami wanted him so badly out. It was so weird last year, Adam. Like, he decided he wanted to leave, or was like, their defense stunk anyway. I mean, this guy has the pedigree as a prime defensive coordinator for many years.
So, Craig, what happened in Miami was the veteran players did not like the way that they were being used in Vic Fangio's scheme, and they voiced this to Mike McDaniel. McDaniel kind of forced them out, and Vic, who's been beloved by the Eagles, in fact, they've been running his scheme for years. Howie Roseman, the GM, and Nick Sirianni, the head coach, recruited Vic. It wasn't a tough recruitment because he was actually consulting for them a couple years ago anyway during their Super Bowl run. So they brought him back. But other than the Washington game where they gave up a number of big plays, that was the only bad game they've had this season. They were really good yesterday. But Nakobe Dean, my understanding is he suffered a torn left patella. By the way, the rehab on that's longer than ACL. It's a shame. Nakobe Dean, Craig, was having a phenomenal season. Well, voting 2 polls, and I was going to vote for him probably for as one of the most improved defensive players in the National Football League. And by the way, last year, he had the dreaded Liz Frank rupture of his midfoot, and that took him 9 months to rehab. Poor guy. You feel for him. And by the way, A.J. Brown, he's got that left knee issue. I don't know that he was himself yesterday. He had a couple nice blocks, and I know their passing game struggled, but he also has not looked right since he hurt his knee when they were trying to pass the game, pass to win against the Steelers. You might remember that. He got tackled. He tackled awkwardly. That was in Week 15, and he has not looked quite the same. And the Eagles' passing game is the same, but their defense right now is carrying them.
Yeah, and the Eagles, certainly will be a favorite. 2.5-point favorites over Minnesota, 6.5 over the Rams, depending on who advances. Let's put a bow on the Packers season real quick here, Adam. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions yesterday, 212 yards on the season. Green Bay started the season looking like a potential Super Bowl contender, but as time went on, Love really didn't, get better over the course of the year. I know that injuries played a major factor in yesterday's game in particular, but with all of these receivers that they have, one by one, it's hard for fantasy to predict who's going to catch what on this team. Don't they need like one primary main type target like they used to have with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams or Brett Favre with the guys he had with, I guess it was Freeman and Brooks. Like, I feel like they need a reliable guy there.
Well, a couple things here. So, unfortunately, Christian Watson, who they love as he's their shot play receiver. That means throwing the ball downfield. That's the type of receiver he is. He tears his ACL, the right ACL last week. And then Jaden Reed gets hurt in this game. The fact they were down their top 3 receivers for this game. And Jordan Love, you're right. He's very consistent this season. Terrible start to the season. He actually got hurt against the Eagles. He had an MCL sprain. And then middle of the season, he was tearing it up. In fact, he closed the season with 7 straight games without an interception. And then they turned the ball over 4 times yesterday. When you lose the turnover battle 4-0, you're not winning, unless you're Jared Goff, who threw 5 interceptions and won against Houston. But that's a miracle win. But the bottom line is, yes, Green Bay is they're what we call a balanced team between the run and pass game. See, talking to them, they don't feel like they need a number 1 receiver because they're so deep at receiver if everybody's healthy. But none of them, other than Jaden Reed, who, by the way, is a very good football player, none of them really command the ball a lot. And you saw Dontavian Wicks fill in for Christian Watson yesterday. That's when Darius Slay had the pick on it on Wicks. But bottom line is they lost. Their defense did the best that it could. But, offensively is where it was at. And boy, Jordan Love, that right elbow injury, I would agree with you. He was off yesterday. There's no question about it.
Yeah, he talked about it during the week that it was still bothering him. So, that was why I took Philadelphia. I just couldn't possibly listen to a guy standing in his locker telling me he's not feeling good and then take that team at quarterback. I can't do it. I can take Washington. Boy, Washington 23-20. They get the win here. And, the thing that really stands out for me about them is that if they're in a close game with Detroit, look out, because they have played so many close games this season and the quarterbacks never seems to be phased. McLaurin, it doesn't matter what, they finally put 2 guys on him and then the other guys all of a sudden awoke on this team. So, look, I don't say team of destiny, Adam. The way that I look at this is just being pragmatic about it. When we get to this round in the NFL, if you think that there's not going to be one surprise or one upset, then you haven't been watching the NFL the last 50 years. I don't know which one it's going to be, but someone is going to surprise us this weekend. And I just personally think that Washington can fight with Detroit. A tough defense, they may have a problem, but Detroit doesn't have that tough defense. I think it's going to be a close game.
Craig, it's funny. On Farrell's show on Thursday on Coast to Coast, taking your point about you got to start picking some upsets. So, I have to pick every game by the number. And I know you said you went 5-0. I went 4-1. on the wild card round. That's when I do well wild card round. I don't do well in the regular season, but I really clean up in terms of picking games versus a number. And the only game that I picked outright where I said you don't even need the money line, that the Commanders will beat the Bucs, and Scott was surprised. I was like, I'm telling you, they don't need the 3. They're gonna prove that Jaden Daniels is for real in the playoffs. And by the way, they're gonna handle the Bucs secondary, which they did. Now they couldn't run the football. That does worry me, Craig, in this game on Sunday, because not that you want to try to control the clock, because Detroit, when they get the ball, is probably going to score, but you got to be able to run the ball at least a little bit. And that, boy, in the red zone, they were horrendous last night. Absolutely horrendous. How many times are they going to go for the ball, go for it on 4th down and not get it? That was really a tough watch. But in the end, Jaden Daniels hung in there. Wasn't easy. They don't have the best offensive line of football. They've kind of overachieved, to be honest with you, on that offensive line. Some good coaching by Bobby Johnson. But bottom line is they won. It was a phenomenal game. That was, by the way, the game of the week. That was a great game, and I'm so happy. And I know you've been on Daniels. I got to give you credit. You said it very early in the season, although you did say Super Bowl. I'm like, dude, they're not getting the Super Bowl.
I still stick with it.
I still feel that
I'm
way.
not going away from
They're
that.
not.
I'm sticking with it. I
They're
think they
not
will
beating
beat Detroit.
Yeah.
I think they will beat Detroit this week.
Someone
is going to upset someone. Who's it going to be? Someone is going to upset. You think it's going to be Houston over Kansas City? I don't think so. So it's got to be
Minnesota, probably. I shouldn't say that being in here in Philly, but
no.
Minnesota,
Not
by the
good for
way,
that.
their defense. We're going to talk more about this later in the week, but Brian Flores' defense is phenomenal. I do expect them to win tonight, by the way.
All right. Well, we will see. Depends on which Rams team shows up, really. Great stuff as always, Adam. We'll catch up again later in the week.
Thanks.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got Pro Football Today coming up later. Monday Night Football, of course. It is the final game of Wild Card Weekend. The Rams in Arizona, the home team, taking on the Minnesota Vikings. We'll get to that a little bit later. Catch Pharrell 3 o'clock Eastern. For now, let's dive into one of the all-time boxing greats. Is that fair to say? Over the last 2 decades. Also, what was A.J. Brown reading on the sideline? And also farewell to a couple of Yankees fans. Time now for some Last Lick. Well, 32 wins in 2 decades boxing appears to be enough. Or is this a threat? I'm not sure, but Tyson Fury, one of the very few heavyweights in boxing that are actually worth watching these days, that are not like social media champions. No offense to the Paul guys, but just the truth. He was 34, 2 wins, 1 loss, 24 knockouts for Tyson Fury, who's had some epic heavyweight fights through the years, went on social media today and decided to retire. Now, folks, I say retire always with an asterisk when it comes to boxing, because there are very few boxers that actually retire and then don't unretire. In fact, you probably could name the few that don't, like Lennox Lewis comes to mind as one who retired and didn't come back. But, there's some squabble as to whether or not, Tyson Fury didn't want to fight this boxer, I guess, later in the year. He decided to call it quits. I don't know. A certain amount of money always makes these guys continue. But Fury in his time was one of the very few must-watch heavyweight fighters in a sport right now that is really struggling to gain a lot of traction and to get more people to watch. So congrats to Tyson Fury on a great boxing career, at least for now. 24 knockouts. All right, this was the story of yesterday during that Eagles-Packers game, without a doubt. There was a moment during the game where the cameras at the game caught wide receiver A.J. Brown on the sidelines reading a book, to which Tom Brady said that he doesn't ever remember seeing, and he played 20 years in the league, more than 20 years, anyone reading a book on the sideline. But yes, that's what A.J. Brown was actually doing. And in fact, he admitted afterward that he does read books. Why not? On the sideline. In fact, on social media, he said that the book is called Inner Excellence, which is an inspirational manual for self-mastery, a powerful mental habits book endorsed by professional and for professional athletes by former Chicago Cubs player, Jim Murphy. The coolest part, by the way, about this book for me was seeing that right there on social media, the fact that he's just like the rest of us, right? In school, remember when we highlight those books, like the parts that we want to remember and read? And that, by the way, highlighting in school never worked for me. Like, it felt like it was just me highlighting books and it never stuck. Like, I was a good student. I was okay. But that stuff, it was just for me doing it. I don't know why for me it didn't work, but for maybe A.J. Brown it does. And the question is how many books did this sell overnight? I have a feeling we'll be hearing that, and I guarantee you this will be part of the show 24 hours from now, tomorrow. I have a feeling that hundreds, if not thousands of books are going to be sold for A.J. Brown reading a book on the side. All right, finally, over the weekend, you may have missed this one. Kind of slid under the radar. Baseball's been quiet. Not a lot of signings lately. We had a lot, and then things calmed down. But do you remember those guys in that game in the World Series that caught that foul ball and grabbed the arm of Mookie Betts to get him to, not field the ball in the outfield? You remember that? One of the main guy who did it, his name is, I think, Capobianco, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Major League Baseball has banned those fans not just from Yankee Stadium, but also from all Major League Baseball stadiums indefinitely. This is what the New York Post is reporting. Now, if you may remember back at the time, there was this brief announcement that they were going to be allowed into the game. And then, of course, our producer Frank told me this, and I told him that is not true. That's not going to happen. I don't care what is being said. These guys are never going to walk in that stadium ever again. And of course, chalk one up for me in that one because I was right. Now, I am a little surprised, though, that they're banned at every stadium. To me, I don't know. I mean, they made a mistake. It feels a little extreme. I think the issue may be is these guys did not seem all that remorseful about grabbing Mookie Betts. And sometimes I think you got to go that route and apologize for what you did. They never really did that. And I think that that's probably holding them back here. But needless to say, no grabbing players in the outfield. Can't do that when they go foul. Just let the ball go. Don't grab the guys. It's not cool. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Thanks again to Adam Kaplan, and thanks to Pat Evans, our guest today here on the program, as well as Vinnie Iyer from Sport News. For our director, Luke, and my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. Enjoy the rest of your day, and enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll recap it all for you tomorrow. We'll have the full field of the NFL playoffs when I see you next at 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great Monday, everyone. See you then.